I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's a special city council meeting, and in fact, the only real topic of discussion today, well, I guess there's others, but the main topic of discussion is to welcome and meet our congressman. So with that said, I'm hoping we can all rise and the Congress can lead us to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I believe we still need a roll call.
Councilmember Ehrenkranz.
Here.
Councilmember Warren. Here. Councilmember Zeitz.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Haggerty. Here. Mayor Brown.
Here. And I guess we have to read that blah, blah, blah about public comments, if somebody wants.
Any person wishing to address the city council on any matter within the jurisdiction of the city, whether or not it appears on the agenda, is asked to complete a speaker request form available on the back counter. The completed form is to be submitted to the city clerk prior to an individual being heard by the city council. The city council has adopted a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you are commenting on the agenda item, your comments will be heard at the time that particular item is scheduled on the agenda. Please note that if you are addressing the city council on items not on the agenda, the Brown Act does not allow discussion of such items. Therefore, the city council may only do the following: refer the matter to staff, ask for additional information, or request a report back, or give a very limited factual response.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have an opportunity to have a more informal discussion with the congressman. But at this time, is there anybody that would like to say anything that's not related to items on the agenda?
I have 3 speakers, sir.
Okay.
First, Travis Montgomery.
Travis?
Travis Montgomery, and I'm not sure whether this is considered related to the agenda or not, so, but it's a comment, and welcome Congressman to Canyon Lake. We're really pleased to have you. What I wanted to say, and it does directly relate to the Congressman, is that the city of Jurupa recently got its own zip code. When I send out for information or send a credit card or order something, they say, "Oh, you live in Quail Valley." Well, Quail Valley isn't even a city. It's a part of the city of Menifee, and it used to be a part of the county. Other times they'll say, "Oh, you live in Sun City." Well, Sun City isn't even a city. It's a part of Menifee now, but it used to be a county region. So hopefully someone on the council, or perhaps the congressman, he's probably astute enough, can address this, or his staff can in the future, about a zip code for Canyon Lake, which is a fully incorporated city, operates that way, and it would be nice to be recognized that way. So thank you very much, and again, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Travis.
Debbie Walsh.
Hi there. Good morning. It's afternoon, actually. Yeah, my name is Debbie Walsh, and the reason I'm here is I think fire safety must be a top priority for any city. The County of Riverside failed to negotiate a good deal in their contract to provide fire services for Canyon Lake. In 2002 agreement negotiated by former Supervisor Buster to supplement the fire services for Canyon Lake was fair and balanced in a manner that benefited not only Canyon Lake, but mutual aid fire stations nearby in Lake Elsinore and Menifee. The 4-year contract from 2011 to 2015 for Canyon Lake was just over $1.6 million per year, with the county chipping in $257,000 a year. In 2015, Riverside County renegotiated the contract, and unfortunately they didn't chip in any money to help Canyon Lake out. And I think that was very unfortunate because Canyon Lake now doesn't even have a fire station, which is really, really in bad shape. And the time frame, of course, for responses is taking much longer. And the other cities are also impacted because the response times for them is going to be longer. And they have to respond to your calls, then they're going to take longer. So if I'm elected supervisor, of course, I would put that as my top priority to make sure that Canyon Lake would receive their fire station services back. And I would commit county funds to do that with SID funding or whatever was possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brenda, I'm going to butcher your last name, so no, sure.
Good afternoon, council persons and Congressman Calvert. It's kind of fortunate that you were off. I received a call maybe a week and a half ago from someone who was asking questions about you, Congressman, and what we felt about you and what you could do for our city and for residents of Riverside County. And so I told whoever that was, I don't recall who it was, but I think it might have been a staffer, that I would like you to consider helping us dissolve this city. We don't have a tax base. We have continued failure on the city's part, despite their best efforts, to provide fire services, to provide a level of sheriff's services that the county unincorporated portions enjoy. And I'm going off of an article from August 2015 in the Press Enterprise where it was discussed with Supervisor Chuck Washington, and I think it was Kevin Jeffries, had voted to suspend another vote to provide, I think it was 1.4 or 1.2, no, 1.2. And I'm sorry I didn't memorize the statistics, but more than one officer per 1,000 residents. We don't have that in Canyon Lake. We have approximately 11,000 residents, and I think, and the council will correct me, I hope, I think it's one officer to those 1,000 residents, or 11,000 residents. So we're not getting the quality that we could if we were not a city. We're not getting the quality of fire that we could if we weren't a city. We're not getting the quality of sheriffs that we could if we're not a city. And typically cities provide parks, and we don't have a single city-funded park. All of the parks in Canyon Lake are privately funded through the members of the CLPOA. There is one through a memorandum of agreement. There is one area of the BLM properties, approximately 820 acres, that back in 2011, the city was working with to preserve those. And the reason to preserve it given was to keep it as open spaces and multi-use trails for hikers, bikers, equestrians, and fishing. An agreement was made. There was a talk, I was referring to some of the previous articles in the Friday Flyer where the city had talked about applying for a lease for 99 years to keep that sort of a park area, and now the city is doing exactly what they tried not to stop the BLM and other developers from doing. Now they want to develop that land. And so we're going to lose, so to maintain a city, we lose our fire, we lose the adequate coverage of sheriffs, and we lose our parks. And so there, and we get a higher tax all for the exchange. And so I'm saying, would you at least consider it and research it and maybe not try to save this sinking ship? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there other?
Nancy Horton?
Congressman Calvert, members of the City Council, thank you for letting me speak. I was on my way here and I got a phone call from the president of the Quail Valley Environmental Coalition, and a group of us went to the Santa Ana Regional Water Quality Control Board March meeting, in March obviously, And we were trying to understand why there was an item on the agenda to re-up the moratorium that was placed on Quail Valley on all building and all repairs. Started in 2005. It went into effect in 2006. And the board was going to re-up it because nothing has been done. There's no new sewer in Quail Valley, nothing has changed. The members of that regional board did not seem to understand that nobody in Quail Valley has been able to do anything. You realize that it's so close to Canyon Lake that these failing septic systems pour coliform bacteria into our lake every time it rains a significant amount, like 2 inches. And I've been part of a group working with the Quail Valley Environmental Coalition for 8 years to advocate for getting funding. We've been totally unsuccessful in getting the city of Menifee to do anything. The answer there is that it's not our fault. All this trouble happened before we became a city. The county needs to fix it. The county says, we don't need to do anything. It's now an incorporated city. The city needs to do it. Eastern Municipal Water District has the responsibility of actually building the sewers. And they've been looking for money under every rock for the last 10 years. They got a grant of $2 million and then were told really only $200,000 was available. They then were told by the state that they had grants of $4 and $5 million coming, and they would be able to break ground on a sewer system for Quail Valley in the final quarter of this year. I just got a letter from them last month that said, the state said, whoops, we're not going to award that money because now Proposition 1 passed, and Proposition 1 funds would be the right place for EMWD to get this funding. I then did some investigation and found out from the executive director of SAPA that Proposition 1 has not been funded. They don't have a staff. They don't have a criteria available for even getting applications through. And it's to be expected that it would take 24 months before they even had a way to apply for that funding. But now everybody in the state is applying for that funding, so EMWD is back to square one. Congressman Calvert told me several years ago when we took him on a tour of Canyon Lake that it would have been a perfect earmark for the federal government, only there are no more earmarks. It looks to me that the state cannot fund this. We're talking about funding Phase 1 of Area 9, 150 houses and 50 vacant lots. That's all. It's not even the tip of the iceberg as to what has to be done. And the state will not lift the moratorium until we fully sewer Area 9 and Area 4. So we've just been getting a runaround for 10 years. And the regional board was willing to re-up it for another 10 years. Today, I got a phone call that suddenly the regional board is galvanized. They're asking the city of Menifee, why haven't you done anything? And they called them to a very important meeting to tell why. The state board is now galvanized and they're asking, why hasn't the city of Menifee done anything? Why is the moratorium still in place? And why is it that the county has not approved one single application to fix a sewer system, a septic system? I'm appealing to Congressman Calvert. We need federal help on this. The county doesn't seem capable, the state doesn't seem capable, and the people who live in Quail Valley are going to face another 10 years with failing septic systems. And whenever the test results come out after every rain, I get the results and people on the council here do as well. We're going to see coliform bacteria pouring into Canyon Lake, a drinking water reservoir. I'm just appealing to the feds to come in and rescue us. We need about $12 million now. We need probably $84 million to do the whole job in Quail Valley, and we just don't have a state that seems to know how to get that money in our hands. I can't face the people of Quail Valley. We're going to have our annual meeting on April 23rd. I can't face the people of Quail Valley one more time and tell them that we have failed to advocate for them. somebody has to help us. And they have to clean up a mess in a drinking water reservoir that just doesn't seem possible to keep on going. So I do thank you for your opportunity, and thank you for letting me have a couple more minutes. Thank you.
One more. Kathy Mulcahy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Mulcahy. Hello, Council and Congressman Calvert. I'm here to talk briefly about the BLM land that is trying to be, that the city is trying to develop. I spoke at the last council meeting, and you said that you couldn't speak about anything because it wasn't on the agenda item. So in trying to find out information about this development, I've called the BLM and I've called several other people, but I think if you could put this on as an agenda item at one of the next meetings, that maybe you guys could discuss it and give us a little bit more information. We have almost 500 people on the petition that is against the development of the BLM, and we're going to continue hopefully to grow. So I just would request that you guys could put that on an agenda item so we could get more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other requests to speak? Anybody in the audience? Oh, here comes Jack.
There you go, throw it.
First of all, thank you very much, Congressman, for coming down and talking with us. As you know, several years ago, we started talking about the BLM, and we understood that they were in the process of selling it. We met with BLM, and then we met with Riverside, the Fish and Game, and those people, and kind of get an idea of the programs that they were interested in. Moving our BLM property to strictly a park is something that our city could not afford. We can't afford a big park. We felt that the east side of the 640 acres, there's another section over in the dump area, but the east side of the 640 acres could be developed, and also on the west side could be the parks as far as trails and everything. It would have to be worked on. The topography is rather steep, but that can be changed, and that would be an excellent place. And also, we felt that the developers could help do that. Along with the development, the developers could build their own streets and so on, as they would have to in most areas. And they would probably increase the storage area for water, because they could do exactly what Canyon Lake did 40, 50 years ago, and that's cut the areas in like Eastport, and we have a lot of areas cut in there, and houses and so on, and they could do the same thing over there. Expense-wise, it would probably work out pretty well. The city could exist on that, and also support the trails and the whatever they would want to do with the park. That trail was something that was put forth on the west side about 20 years ago, and that would still work, and I think our city would be more than happy to work with the developers. We have a couple of developers that are interested in sitting down with the city and talking about the east side. We haven't done that yet because we were asked not to, with reference to the BLM property, and Tim and I went to that meeting several years ago, and they asked us not to go any further with it until the actual sale information, which I know you've been working on, Congress in Washington. I don't know where we are. I don't think anything's ever going to happen until after the election regardless. But if you could kind of keep us informed or the city council rather. And I think that the development would work. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any requests to speak?
No, sir.
Without objection, I'd like to suspend the rules a little bit so this can be more of a town hall meeting and we don't have to follow strict protocol. I guess I'd like to introduce our guest today, Congressman Calvert, who I'm sure most of you know represents us. I'm not sure exactly how many years you've been in Congress, but enough to learn the ropes on the Appropriations Committee and Defense Committee and Interior. Big job in the Interior, so I'm sure you'd tell us more if you'd like to brag a little bit, but without ado, is there any comments you'd like to make, and then we'll just open this up for discussion.
Sure. Well, thank you. See if this is working yet. Thank you for having me here today. I try to get out to the city officially once a year and meet with everybody and find out what issues, especially regarding the federal government and interaction with the city of Canyon Lake. So I know a number of issues were brought up here. I know, so maybe I can quickly address that, and then any questions that you might have. One on zip codes. This is not the only community I represent that's having this difficulty. As you probably know, that the Postal Service is having some financial difficulties. But irregardless of that, they need to do a new postal route study of this entire region. The last time they did that, the populations were different. We don't have, for instance, we don't have a zip code for the city of Eastville, which is a city of 85,000 people. So obviously they feel very strongly about at least having, they'd love to have a post office too, of course, but the Postal Service isn't building a lot of post offices right now. But we'll certainly take a look at that. They probably need to do a postal route survey in this region. It probably includes Menifee and the rest of this area to find out how they're regarding. As far as dissolution, I'll leave all that, dissolution of cities, I'll leave that all to you. That's more of a local issue, and I don't want to interfere with that. On the sewer, that was brought up. I know that's been an ongoing issue, and certainly it's, Quail Valley is along with Setco Hills and other areas in the rural areas that didn't have sewer some years ago. It was mentioned, I wish I still had the ability to write various things into the federal budget that has an absolute federal nexus to it, and obviously clean water is a subject. EPA is under my jurisdiction, so because I chair the Interior Appropriations Committee. But there is a grant program within the Environmental Protection Agency, which is STAT grants, state tribal grants, and so I've been working with Eastern and others to try to get them high on the list for those grants, and that's absolutely, I think, an area of that they're having their financial challenges would qualify. So I would suggest that we continue to push to get those grants, to get some federal money into this. I think at the end of the day, it has to be a combination of funds. It's not just federal funds. It has to be some state funds, federal funds, and the local community. Even though there are some a small, even if it's a small amount of money that relative to the entire cost of the project could be put to that, but it needs to get done before anything in that area can be done. You're right, there's a moratorium until sewer service can be provided, and for public health purposes, obviously that needs to occur. As far as the BLM, I think the Bureau has done a study of a number of lands that they have. I believe that they do want to surplus this property. They would work with the local community. It's not up to the BLM for, though there are myriad of federal agencies, Fish and Wildlife, BLM, others that may have concerns about how the property is developed, but that's really up to the city and the county to decide what in the community themselves to get involved in that debate. I'll leave it to you, but I do believe that they will surplus that property shortly, and leave that up to you to decide what the future use of that property may or may not be. I know nowadays too, you've got security concerns, and people trespassing on property, and that's been I remember that when I was a kid back in the 1960s. That's been going on that property for a long, long time. So with that, I'd just like to hear from all of you and anything that you might want to ask me as far as concerns you have or anything else for that matter.
Council?
I have one issue that I would request that you supported HR 4731, which is the Refugee Program Integrity Resolution Act. I understand it's coming up, I don't know how soon for a vote, but basically is to set a cap, I think, of 60,000 with congressional approval, and it would be sending the discretion to the state and local level on how to determine the refugees that were put into their area. And I would very strongly ask you to support that.
Right. Yeah, the issue of refugees obviously is a topical one. I am on record of asking that there be a pause at the present moment on all refugee movement from the Middle East. Primarily, I put my defense hat on. I'm also on the Defense Appropriations, and I serve on the intelligence community. Right now, we're not able to do a proper background check on anyone because we're not aware, unfortunately, of where people come from, what villages they come from, what their backgrounds, and until we get a better understanding of that, we need to pause until we get a better information and a better process in which to move people through to make sure that we maintain the safety of people here within the United States. So though the President has gone ahead and is moving people into the United States, that number is in flux, both from Syria and Iraq and other places. I'm still concerned about who's coming into the United States and to make sure that we don't have people infiltrate themselves into a refugee program and come and do things we don't want to have happen here in the United States, as we see in Brussels or Paris and other, right here in San Bernardino, California. So, but I'll take a strong look at that and we'll stay in touch. Council?
Well, this is a softball, I guess, yeah, in the terms of asking questions and things. But listening to the debates that are going on and everything's going on, and E-Verify is brought up constantly, and you must feel very proud of your participation in that, and we're proud that, I'm proud to know that somebody that did that, and that's come up all the time, so it must make you feel good that years ago you saw this and did something about it.
Yeah, it's now, E-Verify started out as a basic pilot program when I wrote the original legislation. Now it's expanded into E-Verify. Still a voluntary program, though probably 25–30% of all Americans that are in the workforce are moved through E-Verify. I obviously like to see it as a mandatory program, and all the presidential candidates have spoken to that, and that's great. And so I think we're moving in that direction. Not just to keep people who are not legally qualified to be in the workforce, but also to be able to understand who's coming into the United States and what, you know, we have security concerns still. So E-Verify is an important part of all of that, and it's working. It's non-discriminatory because everybody has to go through E-Verify for your employer. All your employees have to go through that. It's easy to use. It's a web-based system. So we have, I think, right now close to 600,000 employers in the United States. I figure that an average office, I mean, a business has 100 people, you can do the math, that's how many people run through E-Verify each and every year, so it's been a very successful program. So thanks for bringing that up, John, appreciate it.
Well, since that was a softball, can
Yeah.
I do the reverse?
Yeah.
You know, one of the things in listening, sitting in a local small community, not in a political office, in listening to some of the things that are going on in Washington through the news, doesn't mean it's actual. We all know that there's a lot of truth and untruth in some of that stuff, but I guess it's just concerning to me to hear some things about a particular party, the Republican Party, in that if a Republican wants to have hearings in the Senate, so you can talk bad about these people, in the Senate for hearings for the Supreme Court Justice, that the Tea Party will attack and get him out of office, and just wonder what is going on in Washington, and people can't do the right things because of political aspects, and I don't know whether that comes down to Congress, but that's just what I heard in some other areas.
Well, I think there's a lot of anger out there, and I come home every week, and I'm, local market, coffee shop, and so I hear from people from every walk of life, and there's a lot of anger and frustration, and that shows itself in this campaign right now, I think. And so, but that doesn't take away that there are people who feel that the system has failed. And so we have to listen to that and take notice of it and try to address people's concerns. I think primarily it's economically based. People feel, many, that not only is the quality of jobs that are out there today aren't of the same ilk as they were a number of years ago, same opportunities, and the wages have not kept up, they believe, to the demands of everyday life. And so I think that exhibits itself in a lot of frustration and anger, especially in the trades, and a lot of construction workers I talk to all the time, truck drivers and people who work in warehouses and so forth. And I talk to folks all the time, and that's a legitimate concern, and I think we have to address it. And what you hear in Washington is, whether it's issues with the Supreme Court or anger at politicians, I think that they want the ability to vote in this November as far as the Supreme Court, because that's a big decision. And so I think this next election is going to be a big one. However, no matter who you vote for, it's going to be hugely consequential to the future of the United States. Obviously, you know how I'm going to vote, but the others, but that's the great thing about America. Everybody gets to go down there and vote whoever they want to vote for.
I'd like to make a comment about Supreme Court Justice and then ask a question. My comment being, it will be difficult, in my opinion, to replace Scalia, who was probably one of the most brilliant minds that we've ever had on the court. And I personally hope we hold out for somebody that comes close to the brilliance that he exhibited.
Well, I knew, I had the privilege of knowing Anthony Scalia, having lunch with him a few times. He was truly not only a great intellectual, but just a fun guy to be around, and just a remarkable human being. The country will miss him. Obviously, his family is going to miss him deeply. Very devout person, and who loved life. I wish he was there to make the decision, unfortunately, that wasn't made with a 4-4 tie. You probably heard of it today on a case which would have gone, I think, from my perspective, the right way if Judge Scalia would have still been alive, but unfortunately he's not with us. So you're right, it's a huge, one of the big consequences of this election is the next president probably will pick at least 3 Supreme Court justices. That's a big deal.
The question I wanted to ask, a little pointed, since you're charge of the Committee of Appropriations on the EPA. My opinion is that looking back at past legislation, it seems to me there's one line and one piece of legislation that talks about endangered species, and out of that one line and one piece of legislation has evolved this incredible bureaucracy that's overwhelming communities in their ability to development. It's hamstringing what we can do at a local level. There's agencies upon agencies that are restricting people's own access to their what they can do with their land. I guess I've obviously commented, but my question would be, and I think part of the anger that we're experiencing today in the country is people resent that the bureaucratic interpretation and legal interpretation of one line of legislation has led to bureaucracies that a lot of us feel are out of control. Is there any hope of getting agencies like the EPA back under control and in a position where they're responsive to the concerns of real people?
Let's divide EPA and Fish and Wildlife, which is primarily the agency responsible for enforcing the Endangered Species Act, along with, to some degree, NOAA, that has the fish species. On the EPA side, I've cut the EPA's budget back to the 1989 staffing levels, which is obviously the director of the EPA is not very happy with me. But they had as my old boss would say, Ronald Reagan, it doesn't take a bigger bureaucracy to have a cleaner environment. So I'm trying to cut the number of full-time equivalent employees within the Environmental Protection Agency to bring it more into reality based upon our financial needs. On the endangered species side, Fish and Wildlife, you're right. When the original act passed, it almost passed unanimously. Richard Nixon signed it into law. And in those days, people were thinking of the grizzly bear and the golden eagle and those iconic species that were obviously endangered. And people weren't thinking of subspecies, of certain kinds of cockroaches or rats or other types of both animal and insect life. I'll give you an example. I also, because I chair the committee, I have oversight of the Department of Interior, and that includes the operation of the Delta up in the northern part of the state. And we have a species there called the Delta smelt, you may be very aware of. And I've been following the flow charts every day within the Delta. Because of the Endangered Species Act, because of the Pacific salmon population and the Delta smelt population, we're operating under what they call a biological opinion. Last biological opinion was done in 2008, and it restricts the amount of water we can pump during the spawning season of the Delta smelt. Well, we've been going through the spawning season. They keep changing the date of how long the spawning season lasts. It's supposed to last for a certain period of time. They've extended it because they believe that the water temperatures are somewhat higher than they should be, and so they think subjectively that they have to extend the spawning season. And so by that, it means they are restricting the amount of water that we can pump out of the Delta. We can pump 11,000 cubic feet per second out of the Delta. We've had upwards to 150, 170,000 cubic feet per second moving through the Delta. And we were restricted to 5,000, but they would artificially determine that we should be pumping, say, something less, 1,500 or 2,000 or 3,000. That means 95+% of the water is going underneath the Golden Gate Bridge right now. And all we're asking to do is pump 3% or 4% of that. And they're saying the difference, the incremental differential between 97% or 94% or 92% would be enough to endanger the species enough where that would lead to extinction. Though they could pump, they'll let 100% go and the species may still go to extinction. to the extension. So we have a situation right now where we've had the most water flow in 10 years in the Delta, but this year, this El Nino year, we have pumped less water than we did last year in the midst of a drought, because of subjective understanding of the Endangered Species Act, and because of two biologists, we talk about the power of bureaucracy, that are determining the pump rate at the two major pumps that are operating in the Delta at the present time. So in people's frustration, they're told, don't water your front lawn, don't conserve water, and all these things are good things to do, but yet we're letting the water go that would help the farmers in the Central Valley that are experiencing 50% unemployment. Over 1 million acres have been laid fallow. Economic catastrophe throughout the valley, and the percentage of water that would come down here to Diamond Valley Lake and to the reservoirs, the 5 primary reservoirs in the Metropolitan Water District, which are not being filled for purely subjective reasons, in my opinion. Yesterday, we got a notification because there was a spotting of what they believed were larvae from smelt, that we would have to shut the pumps down to almost nothing. It was over 20 miles away from the pumps. So this stuff is going on right now.
So what would you stop it, Congressman?
Well, you have to change, we tried to change the law at the end of last year. I was trying to work with Senator Feinstein. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. I'm still trying to do something to mandate that we operate more effectively these pumps, and this is specific to the Delta. But overall, I mean, we're seeing Endangered Species Act problems that are just, I think, misinterpreted throughout the country. We need to reform the Endangered Species Act and bring it into reality. And we want to save species. We want to do the right thing. No one wants to see a species go extinct. But on the other hand, we have to bring rationality to this process. We have, for instance, we reintroduced the wolf into Wyoming and to the Pacific Northwest, and it's been very prolific. And the wolf population has now recovered. And now we have the Center for Biological Diversity and others stopping us from delisting, even though Fish and Wildlife has determined that the wolf population in the Great Lakes and Wyoming and other locations has recovered. So it's very frustrating. So we need to change the act. The Fish and Wildlife Service will put out an order later this year to delist the grizzly bear in Montana and Wyoming, which is good. They've recovered. They're a recovered species. This is the golden eagle is a recovered species. So we're trying to delist some of these species. We need to spend more time on that, on the species that we recovered. But I can spend all day on the Endangered Species Act. I'm as frustrated as you are. But we tried to change it before. We just couldn't get the Senate to go along with it. We'll try to do it again.
Thank you. Council questions?
Yeah, that's where we fought together, the Pearson's Milk Veg Dam that closed so much of the desert tortoise that has closed so much of the desert off to public use. It is a ridiculous situation, but the question is still there of what can the everyday citizen do. In case people don't know, it is ridiculous enough that if I walked outside and I saw a plant that hadn't been there before, I could probably say, I think this is an endangered plant, and it would shut down the city hall until they decided whether it was or it wasn't. That's how ridiculous this is. But does it take letters? I know you were working with Feinstein at the same time that the Monument Act, the protecting some of the riding areas, was going through. Is there something that we can do? I know petitions don't work. I know that mass mailings don't work.
Well, I think that let your senators know how you feel. That's great. Like I said, there's things to look at specifically that we need to work on whether it's the Stevens kangaroo rat out here and how certain lands, because the rat, in my opinion, is not an endangered species any longer. It's recovered, and it's everywhere. Every environmental report you read. So those are specific creatures we can deal with, but overall, there needs to be reform to the Endangered Species Act, and just some incremental reform would be very, very helpful in how we deal with this, because we can do a lot to help species recover, but we're limited because of the act itself. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's true. There are certain things we can't do, like creating hatcheries, for instance, on certain endangered species. The hatcheries have come a long way. We can do this much better than we used to. You know, as far as the desert tortoise is concerned, to help, you know, the military has done a wonderful job in conserving the desert tortoise. What they've done at Fort Irwin and at 29 Palms and Area 51 and areas that have been off. If it wasn't for the military, you know, a lot of these species wouldn't exist.
But it's $49,000 per tortoise.
Well, yeah, I don't know who comes up. I don't know who comes up with these numbers. We had a problem at Camp Pendleton at one point where they would not allow Marines to train on exercises along the beach to dig foxholes, so they had to put down yellow caution tape and facilitate what a foxhole would be. And they wouldn't let tanks come off the landing vehicles because it may impact the plover population along the beach. And Marines have a saying, you train as you fight. And it's hard to do that if you're doing those kinds of things. And so we have to, I worked with Duncan Hunter at the time, senior, to put in a law, specifically at military bases for training purposes are excluded from exempted from the Endangered Species Act. But even then they ignore it. They ignore the law. They still, but it's better than it was, but it's still frustrating. I have to deal with it every day.
Council questions? Audience, is there anybody that'd like to address the congressman?
I do have one follow-up.
Sure. Yes, I prefer that, so you can be recorded. Just so that the voice, we won't be able to see you, but at least people can hear what you're saying.
Again, my name is Brenda Janashik, and I'm a property owner in Canyon Lake. Congressman Calvert, when you talked about the BLM briefly, what position do you take on the development of the BLM property, specifically in our area? Thank you.
You know, I have a deal with cities. I don't get involved in their land use determination. So that's a completely local decision to make between the constituents, which you all do a fine job of representing, and your constituents. And I'm sure you'll have plenty of debates in the future about the future of that land and whether it's developed or not developed. So that's from my perspective. The federal government owns, in the state of California alone, over 70% of the land in the state of California. Federal and state is basically owned by the state or federal government. And if we can surplus off some of the federal land and let it go back to the communities, I'd much rather do that and get it back in the tax base. So from a philosophical point of view, but how it's used, that's up to you all. But the federal government owns 87% of the state of Nevada. It owns, I don't know what percentage of Oregon, but it's right up there around 70, 80%. State of Washington the same. So when we're talking about releasing some land that's owned by the federal government, it's very small amounts of property, and the local communities usually work it out. That's not my decision to make.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Unity? Okay, well, I've got one more I'd like to throw out there. Sure. Just a pet peeve of mine. It seems to me that the costs of college tuition are going up ridiculously. and that the higher educational system is not caught up with current technology. Why are not we moving towards a competency credentialing rather than time-based credentialing where people have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a piece of paper to verify that they can do something, when they could watch most of those, at least a large portion of those classes on the internet and take tests to validate their competency.
It's interesting that the universities and college in general hasn't kept up with the technologies that they teach. That's a point well taken. And that some would say there's a monopoly, maybe in certain, especially in public education, that the private sector can do as good or better job of delivering. And that's somewhat topical, with these private institutions that are being sued or over-regulated by the federal government into bankruptcy. Obviously, if you have a private college, you need to have classes that are recognized, that are certified, that can be usable by the graduate to obtain when they get their degree that it's worth something. But if those institutions can do that on the internet and they can do it more efficiently, effectively, and more affordably, then there's nothing wrong with that. But change is interestingly very slow in the educational industry. The technology that doesn't slow down. As technology now, they say it doubles every 3 years. The computer you have on your desk today is in effect obsolete within 3 years. People continue to use them, but businesses don't. Businesses generally change out all their equipment every 3 or 4 years in order to keep up their own technology to stay ahead of their competitors. But a lot of people don't do that, especially in the educational realm. They don't keep up with technology. They don't do the things they teach in business class or in computer classes and so forth. So it's a point well taken, because when I went to college a million years ago, I went to State College, and it was very affordable. I worked my way through college, and I had a deal with my mom and dad. They paid for my tuition at the State College, which at that time was very affordable, and they paid for my books. And any other expenses, living expenses and all that, I had to go out and work and pay for myself. And my dad told me explicitly, I'm going to pay it for 4 years, and if you're not graduating in 4 years, you're out of luck. So I got it done in 4 years, happily. But nowadays, it's so expensive that people are forced into borrowing enormous amounts of money. And it's in this inflation within healthcare too, but within education, it's just way beyond the normal inflation rate of every other thing within our society. It's crazy.
Yes, I'd like to make a couple comments. One of the problems I see in today's society is when you ask a young person what kind of government we have, they'll say a democracy. We don't have a democracy. If you say the Pledge of Allegiance, it's a republic. And Congressman Calvert, appreciate you coming here. This is what a republic should be. Appreciate you coming here. I learned a heck of a lot about things that made me very frustrated, like the pumping of the Delta. The problem is, one of the things is, there's a lot of mature people here. I don't see a lot of small business people here because of the timing. This is supposed to be a representative government, and I wish that your enthusiasm for voting will come out, but I think, when we typically have 30 or 40% participation rate in voting, there's a lot of apathy out there and frustration. So really appreciate you. If I were king of the world, I'd have these town halls mandatory, because this interaction is wonderful. And I appreciate you coming.
Thank you, thank you, have a good day. Gary.
Congressman, I think this comes in your area. Again, thank you for being here, but regarding the military services and funding of necessary levels, what is your perspective on, do we have sufficient naval ships and Air Force planes and staff to respond to the increasing pressure that we have? And are we adapting technologically the way we could or best could to address this terrorism issue that we're facing?
One is are we keeping up our military? The short answer to that is no. We have the smallest army we've had post-World War II as far as the deliverable strength of Army units that could be delivered to a particular area. The Marine Corps, we're dropping down to approximately 180,000 Marines, which plus the fact that we have to set aside 5,000 Marines or so for cyber security duty, which they have to do internally for the Corps. We have the lowest number of ships since the Spanish-American War. We're down to about 275 ships. Now we're on a building program to hopefully bring that up to 320 ships by 2020, 2022. And it is true the capability of those ships are somewhat better than they've ever been. But you still need to patrol the South China Sea, for instance, which is so immense. You need not just quality, but you need quantity. So the Navy is in a very difficult situation at the present time. The Air Force, we're still flying the B-52. If you're those who were in the Air Force, the B-52 first came across the assembly line. I think the first one was like 1957. So you can do the math on that. We have it scheduled to fly until it's 100 years old. Now it's a great aircraft, titanium construction, changing the insides, the hydraulics, the electronics, and so forth. The idea of flying airplanes until it's 100 years old is pretty ludicrous. I mean, even if it's on the books to fly it, we can't. We have set up a contract with to build a new bomber, which has just been given to Northrop Grumman. So hopefully they can get on the track. But our procurement's not great. We're building a new fighter plane to replace the F-16s, the F-15, and the F-18. The F-16 is being retired from the Air Force in general. F-15 is scheduled to be entirely retired within a couple of years. F-18, we're still building some to get the Navy through and the Marine Corps through this next few years until they can take delivery to the F-35 Marine variant and the Navy variant. But it's a difficult situation as far as technology. That's probably our biggest challenge right now. Our enemy, today's enemy, the terrorism that's going on out there, they're using technology, applications that we can't get into. Encryption is obviously a very big problem, which we sell some of that in San Bernardino, where we can't get into this Apple phone. The FBI has figured out a way to do it without having to go through the courts, but that problem is not going away. We could not listen to the conversations, for instance, that are going on. We know conversations are going on every single day with terrorist groups outside of the United States to groups within the United States right now, today. But we cannot listen to the content of that conversation because we're not able to, because we don't have the encryption software in order to break into that conversation and listen to that conversation, even though it's a foreign conversation, which is allowed with a warrant, applies a warrant to listen to that conversation. So it's a huge problem. biggest problem I think we're really facing today as far as our security against terrorist activities. Though I can spend some time about Russia and they're obviously moving into Crimea and Ukraine and what's going on in the Baltics right now and Moldova. We could spend some time about China and the South China Sea, this development of these islands, which they're creating to offset a carrier force. And in fact, those are carriers. They're building 10,000, 11,000 foot runways, putting sophisticated radar, sophisticated bomber technology on those bases. Vietnam has asked us to come in and try to help them, believe it or not, because of their international waters. Same thing with the Philippines, the same thing with Japan. Japan is having some reluctance about us now moving out of Okinawa. They wanted us out. My father landed there, and along with a lot of our forefathers, we spent a lot of blood and treasure for that territory. I don't think we should give it up easily. It's a very critically located base that we have. We have billions of dollars tied up in that facility. We can't move everything over to Guam because that's just too far away. These distances are huge in the Pacific. Africa, we've got ongoing problems. Libya is just a bloodbath right now. I think that was a mistake. We've got problems in Algeria. We've got problems in Mali. We've got problems in Somalia. We've got problems. And I haven't even got into the Middle East. And what's going on in Iraq right now with its failure to our failure to react to ISIS quicker, this metastasizing of terrorist activity in Syria and Iraq and throughout the Middle East, problems in Lebanon. It goes on and on and on. The world is much less safe today than it's, I think, it has been in my lifetime. And so when we talk about the military, they have a lot of challenges, and we've got to get through this. I don't envy whoever the next president is, he or she, because we are entering into a phase that is, our enemies unfortunately don't fear us, and our allies don't trust us, and we've got to rebuild our presence. It's the greatest country on earth. We still are, but it's we put ourselves in a very difficult situation. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Travis, are you coming up?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm getting out. No, I'm not coming.
Okay. Don't go any farther. I really don't know where you're going. I have a couple of questions. One, how safe do you think, or how much is the government doing to build a cyber attack protection for us? And the second question is, do you feel that Abadi is doing a good job in Iran? Or Iraq? Do you feel, I know Maliki was a thief, but do you feel that he seems to be purging the government of some of dishonesty?
Well, Maliki, the previous prime minister in Iraq, obviously purged the Sunni population out of the military because our failure to enter into a status of force agreement was extremely unfortunate. And the Shia population kind of went, because of Iran's influence within Iraq, went the wrong direction. That's what created the problem in Fallujah, that's what created the problem in Mosul, that's what's created the problem in the northern part of Iraq, which is primarily Sunni. And it's unfortunate because it didn't have to happen, but it did happen. And it has consequences to the people. Probably wonder, well, that's a long ways away, what does that effect did that have on me? Well, unfortunately, it created the environment to create where ISIS, which is basically Al-Qaeda on steroids, was able to develop itself. And these are the same folks that are doing these attacks in San Bernardino or in Brussels or Paris, and God knows where next week. So the existing leadership in Iraq is less enabled by Iran's activities, but certainly still influenced considerably by Iran. The Quds Force is in Iraq. They go in there readily, which is troubling. Remember, the Iranians were responsible for a significant number of the casualties we took in Iraq. They have a very sophisticated weapon systems that they use, especially with their IEDs, which was responsible for a high percentage of the killed in action that we took in Iraq. And so it's hard for me to forget that. And it's hard for me to forget what Iran is capable of doing. Which they're trying to do is obviously supplant the Sunni population as far as the power center. And you have this competition going on between Turkey and Saudi Arabia, the Sunnis, and Shia, and it's a mess. There's no other way to put it. It's gotten a lot messier. It's going to take a long time to. I don't know if we ever had it fixed, but it was much better. It was a much better situation a few years ago than it is today. Cyber. We are probably the most capable. Let's talk about some good news. In spite of the fact that we get hit every single day, the Pentagon gets hit hundreds of times every day. People, the Chinese especially. Chinese are very, very good. They literally put hundreds of thousands of people in their cyber command in China to not only go after our United States military, but also our entire industrial base. They probably have stolen at least $1 trillion worth of intellectual property and taken it to China. And use that in their manufacturing technologies and other technologies that they're involved in. The Russians are even better. The Russians, the Russians have criminal activities that are involved in their internet activities. Their technology is almost as good as ours. They have great mathematicians within the former Soviet Union, Russia, and they're very, very capable. The Iranians are okay. They're not great, but they're okay. But we are still the absolute best. If we ever get upset enough, we could put an offensive cyber attack on all of these nations if we ever chose to do so. We haven't chose to do so, maybe not publicly, but we have the capability of doing so. And I think we sometimes need to remind our potential adversaries of that. If they want to start shutting down electric grids or stealing intellectual property from one of America's great corporations, then sometimes I think it's necessary to send a message back to that nation that if they want to play this way, we can play that way also. But it's coming to that.
Yeah, I heard, I think it was yesterday, that there was a cyber attack on a dam. I think it was wasn't in Oregon, it was in some altitude someplace, and they had control of the floodgates, and they were going to open the floodgates, and this dam was the same name as the dam in Oregon, that would have been catastrophic, but they got the wrong dam, and the floodgate was under maintenance, so it was shut down, the controls, which is the only reason it wasn't successful, and of course they found it. And that's what prompted me of this question, how much are we working
It's one of the biggest threats in America today is cybersecurity. And it's not just big companies, it's your own personal bank accounts, it's your own it's all, small businesses. Everyone needs to make sure that they have the best technology available to secure your own systems. make sure you do, because this is a real deal.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, go ahead, Jordan.
First, I want to thank the mayor for allowing this to be just an open forum and bypassing the rules of the agendas that we usually have. And we'll talk on the many subjects that we have. Certainly appreciate the information that you've given us nationally, globally. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. I listened to every word that you had to say. But I think some of the people are here today to hear about what we're doing with our fire department. So I just wanted to kind of come down a little bit and address our local issue. And you had mentioned to Mrs. Horton that there were some grants available perhaps for the sewer system, what have you, in Quail Valley, federal grants. I'm curious, is there any grant available for us to point at our fire station? And if so, how do we go about getting that?
Yeah. None that I'm readily aware of, quite frankly. I'm sorry to say that there's more grant programs available for police than there typically is for fire, but we'll take a look at it and see. I know I've been following the story in the newspaper, and I'm sure there's extreme frustration that you're going through. And you know, I know that Canyon Lake unfortunately doesn't have the tax base you'd love to have, and that's caused a lot of challenges for this community. So if we could find some, I'm more happy. You know, we'd love to help out if we could. So.
Well, granted, we don't have the tax base, but we are still surviving at this time, and I've been here long enough to remember when we were an unincorporated city, and I know the problems we went through then. So keeping the city intact is a very important thing, and whatever we can do financially to do that, I would look to anybody's help. So anything you can do, we would appreciate.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Seeing nobody jumping up, I would like to say thank you to the congressman.
Thank you.
We absolutely appreciate it. If you don't mind, we'll take about a 5-minute recess. That way, if somebody wants to take a picture, maybe we'll afford them the opportunity. And thank you very much.
Picture with Calvert. Mayor, line us up. Line us up.
Everybody's liable on the road.
Randy, how are you doing?
We'll try to make it easy. Oh, Randy.
It's quieter, you know. Like that. No, They just want to be sure, so they're actually going to vote.
A lot of people are.
Yeah, we just, we have a meeting with some people that are here to have.
About the new newspapers at the meeting.
Okay, stay to the very end, and I'll shoot over right after.
Okay.
Yep. I'll be right up, probably shortly. Oh,
If you look at our history, our Constitution was ratified only 28 years after, until after it passed. And even then, it just wasn't passed right away. I mean, it was dealt with the states, didn't give up their state rights. I mean, and, you know, we try to say, yeah, being in Montana, there's democracy, this is what you do, and they're going, yeah, okay, you haven't understood, we'll think about it a little. It took us a long time to get where we were. And even now, what's going on with our elections?
So yeah, we'll definitely.
The other thing you said, we have a war. The basic nature of it, you could only have one skill set which you didn't yet, so you could come to an agreement, which is what we did.
Well,
and now, but these other countries don't think type of thinking to come together.
I do
They
think
even have parties within the Muslim world, there are types of countries.
Shia teaches people don't even know how that came about. No, I'm just doing the history.
I
don't know what comes with the press.
Just wanted to see what was going on in the center or.
Toastmasters meet today, 1:05 to 12:05 to 1. That was in here, right? Oh,
Definitely, yeah.
how's that going? How many do you have?
Yeah, anything else going on?
All good stuff. Right now. Say they're more afraid of speaking publicly than
Oh yeah, that's called social studies. That's not mandatory.
they just stick in the
or a lawyer. Everybody's with a I don't know what skills if I spent the editor role. Metal wouldn't be out there. On the day my uncle was told me if you ever want a different job, you can go wherever you want. And for income, you know, like all of them, skilled individuals. Now guys today, blacks people don't have the resources to get. Good to see you, John. Good to see you.
Yeah.
So your wife was fine a little bit. I tried to send her.
I sent her a message from it, and I just can't take the time off. Well, I'm not afraid to speak publicly. I just haven't undemocratic way. We have the correct word.
Yeah, I did an article about the interest in getting an library.
How hard to take.
A bit of a more serious article in terms of I didn't really have anything to hang it on. Other than what you said, that's all I can say. A lot of sites I did.
Yeah, if I had to do a speech, I would be, but when I have to just speak off the top of my head, that would be some point.
I'd like to call the meeting back to order. The next item on our agenda is confirmation of direction given to the city manager at the March 16th meeting, special council meeting, authorizing the city manager to notify County of Riverside City Council decision to request an extension of a cooperative fire contract with the County of Riverside for fire services, and to return to the council with the proposed terms of an extension if granted, and with the expectation that the proposed terms should be similar to the current contract. Can I have a report from the city manager on this situation?
As you just summarized, council gave me my consensus authority to go out and do that. I've had an initial conversation with County Fire. We have an initial meeting scheduled for May 12th. Yes, May 12th.
Why so far?
That's when calendars meshed up. They were gone a lot towards the end of April, and so the best we could do was May 12th.
But you did get a notification.
Yes, I did. And once this is ratified, I will also send out a letter with today's date, so everything will still meet the 6-month deadline.
So this meeting is just
get to know you, find out where the county's coming from, what they're expecting for cost increases, what with regards to the cost sharing, with regards to probably Menifee and Lake Elsinore, as our agreement is structured now.
I think everybody's read the newspaper, President Price, and the article about Lake Elsinore's dissatisfaction with our request for extension. Is there anything you can say to comment on that situation?
Not at this time. I've reached out to their city manager. I'm hoping to have sit down with him in the next week or so, find out what's going on with them. I'm just looking at their fire budget for the last couple of years. Their fire budget this year is about 12% lower than it was for 14-15, about $700,000.
I would just like to make a comment that I think Mayor Tisdale may have spoken before he really got all the facts. I would hope that was the case, because they received over $600,000. I think it was about $640,000 that they received out of the contract that we signed with county. Part of the money went to Menifee and part of it went to Lake Elsinore. And I talked to Rick Mann, and they're very satisfied. It was my understanding from a while back with Bob McGee that Lake Elsinore was perfectly happy. I did not hear, I had a conversation with him, he did not express any disappointment or any unhappiness with it. So I'm thinking maybe the mayor just hadn't discussed thoroughly with everyone. I have no idea, but they did receive a very significant amount of money, and they were very happy with it at the time that the contract was negotiated and signed. They were very pleased with the outcome and the income that they got and the whole thing. So I was a little puzzled by that comment that was printed in the paper.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think Mayor Tisdale would make a comment without having at least a concurrence with a significant number of the council members. When you talked about looking at the budget for Lake Elsinore, was it their their budget proposal for last year?
No, it's their adopted budget for 15-16.
Okay, what I meant was the adopted budget for 15-16 that they did last year. Last June, they did 15.
Right, so the one that expires this June, right, so
Right.
this current budget that they're in is 12% lower than the previous one.
Yeah, and there's reasons for that that didn't take place, and so that was their approved budget, but that's not what they're working on. That budget took into consideration they're going to close Station 10, and which they were told that they could do through the county, and then once the budget was passed with that reduction, CAL FIRE came back and said, no, you can't close Station 10, and they didn't. They did receive some money from us, and they had some additional savings through some efficiencies that they've done through a period of time. But that budget wasn't the budget that they were working on. It was the budget they proposed, and that balanced their budget, and it didn't work. But they did balance it with our money and some other efficiencies.
I just thought of something, I don't know how many of you are aware that Station 7, there's a ribbon cutting ceremony for the opening of the new fire station on Cherry Hills and Bradley in some city, a couple of weeks, I think. Maybe it's next week. I've got it on my calendar. Anyway, we will have a new fire station in that area.
Make a comment. Back when I was researching this topic and trying to understand Lake Elsinore's discontent, I noticed that if you look at a cost per person basis for fire service and the fire areas they protect, including Wildemar, by the way, you find that the cost per person basis in Wildemar is approximately $160 per person, as opposed to 290 in Elsinore and 260 something in Canyon Lake. So there's a reason for their discontent that extends beyond Canyon Lake. Part of the service they're providing to Wildemar that is, if you're looking just on a cost per person basis, would appear to be subsidized. So that being said, I think that we should at least be aware of all the facts when we go into the discussion with Lake Elsinore on some of the reasons that for their concerns that extend beyond the cost of providing service to Canyon Lake. Comments from the council? Questions?
Well, some basic ones, I guess. We've done very well in contingency planning. We've absolutely failed on goal setting. We still don't know and don't have a goal as to whether we're going to have a paramedic or not paramedics, and what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So the thing that in contingency planning is we've already seen in the newspaper that Elsinore may not agree to that proposal. And if they don't,
Can I raise a point of order? Are we discussing still 5.2A, the confirmation of the direction?
Correct.
That's what this meeting is for? Can we reiterate that and get back to that? And because I have to go back to work eventually.
what did I say that was not in point?
I don't see anything that's off point. We need to talk through this topic and make sure that we have clear direction on what we're supposed to be, who we're supposed to be talking to, and what we're supposed to be talking about. And obviously, part of it has to be a resolution with the city of Lake Elsinore too. They have to agree to this. Current extension is in contract with them as well as with the county.
Well, then can we put that on can we put that on a future agenda so that we can discuss that? Because this here is strictly because apparently some were confused as to the direction we had already given the city manager in our last meeting, And this is just to clarify that direction. If we could clarify that direction, close this off, and then start another meeting another time to go further into how we want, what we think is happening with Lake Elsinore, perhaps that would be best, but that's not covered under 5.2A. I just would like to keep us on track with the...
In my opinion, it is.
I realize what you're saying, but when we gave that direction, I remember Councilman Ehrenkrantz saying, go tomorrow, contact the fire station tomorrow, let's get it done. And I was concerned that we didn't have a conversation last week on it, but that it was then to be brought forward back to us today. At that meeting
you just made is that we gave the consensus last week. We had a
No.
discussion. We as a council, the week before, we as the council had a consensus to allow this discussion to go forward. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. We didn't have it at that time. Nothing between now and then has changed. I just want to, I honestly don't know why this was brought on, because it was a consensus. We all were off the usual Brown Act method per the mayor's request. So I just would like us to handle this, that's been put back on here. Can we get a confirmation of direction to the city manager to go forward with this, and then any other further discussion we need to do on the fire, let's put that back on the agenda. Let's notice it for a 6:30 p.m. meeting so the public can be involved in that too.
I would like to reiterate what I see as the importance of getting an agreement with the city of Lake Elsinore. Based on just appearances, it appears that might be the stumbling block in this whole thing, and I think that needs to be part of this consideration.
Except that it's not on this agenda. The agreement with Lake Elsinore is not on the agenda.
I think
we're going to be sticking to the points. We need to stick to the points all of it.
my opinion was that the authorization to look into extending the contract meant the contracts with the associated cities that allowed us to do what we're doing right now. And I think it's important that those extensions, if you will, be agreed to, and that we know that just having the county say, okay, we'll agree with it, doesn't mean that the city of Lake Elsinore will agree with it. And I think we need to get that as part of this confirmation too, that that's part of the direction that we need. We need confirmation that all involved parties are going to agree with this kind of extension.
Well, in line with what Vicki is saying, that we can only deal with what we talked about as far as the direction, that this is a part of the direction that we gave, and that was not all of what was done. What was done was that he will do this and get back to us today.
He did,
When?
just now. He got back to us and told us that he had taken action and he was meeting scheduled. And by the way, our contract was with, I believe, county, which had Lake Elsinore and Menifee sign the contract to approve it. It was a negotiated contract, county with those cities. So it isn't our ability to negotiate with them. It's the county that will negotiate with them because it's county contract. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I believe you have copies of it. It's basically it's a two-part agreement. There's one with the city, with the county, with regarding fire service. And the other one is the city, county, and the cities of Lake Elsinore, Menifee, with regards to the cost-sharing portion of that agreement.
Now, I think that my expectation anyway is that all of those issues be resolved, that's what we expect to happen.
That was my interpretation.
Any other comments from the council?
Yeah, the fact that this was going to be done today, this wasn't in our original agenda, but it was in the addendum one that did take place. My only question was when we got our first agenda that had no discussion whatsoever on the fire, when that was supposed to be what we're going to talk about in addition to Ken Calvert. And so it just miffed me that it wasn't there. And I don't know that being told that we have a contract that says we're going to tell them 6 months from now, and you're saying that this is extended. I don't know how that's extended, who extended it, that we can go to May 12th, and we told them in the contract that we're going to tell them by March 30th, one way or the other way. And that's That's now put off to May 12th. I don't know where that is, who the agreement's with that and all that stuff. And I'm supposed to assume that that's all taken care of?
I think that-
I don't assume that.
I think, at least my interpretation of the situation is that we have made notification. The contract, as I interpret it, does not demand that we have negotiated the extension, simply that we've made notification of the extension. And so if that's the case, then I would say that we're authorizing to move forward within the terms of the existing contract. Now, if they want to dispute, you know, what does notification mean? Does that mean completion of negotiations? Or does that mean simply a notification of extension? You know, there may be an argument there, but it's a hazy one at best. And I think we have to assume, since we're out of time anyway, that our interpretation is probably correct, that the only thing that's required at this point in time is a notification of extension, and not the complete negotiation of the extension.
Well, apparently we've made the notification in the correct amount of time. It's the fact that the county won't meet with us, we won't meet with our city manager until May the 12th. That's out of our hands right now. But we have done what we were supposed to do and told to do. And I thought that this was all done last week when we were at once. But we can, I can make a motion to have this done all over again and voted on, but I don't think it's necessary. I can make a motion today.
No, it's not on the agenda.
It's done. We did it last week. She just regurgitated the same thing.
I will make the proclamation if I'm allowed to, which I don't know if I am. Oh, okay. We have a speaker before I make it.
Barry Talbot.
Mayor, Council, thanks again for the time to speak. You seem a little bit confused about it, and I'm confused about exactly what is our topic here today, but I think what we're talking about is the most important thing to our city, and that's public safety. And I was very pleased to hear earlier in the conversation tonight that Jordan was commenting to the congressman that remaining a city is high on his list. The benefits of our continuing to be a city are tenfold over what they would be if we reverted back to the county. The county itself, probably at the present time, is in worse financial condition than we are. And we voted for the utility user tax to help our city recover from the Great Recession, give us time to recover from the Great Recession, and we still have a lot of time left on that 6-year period of time for the UUT. And I look forward to energetically negotiating continuation of the contracts with the county and with the county fire and with our adjoining cities, and hopefully we'll get some assistance from increased property taxes, and we'll get some assistance from possibly some other grants, and we'll get a better understanding with our neighboring cities. So thank you for pursuing that level of thought.
Are there another comment from the audience? And can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Mayor Brown. And again, I didn't fill out a slip, but I just wanted to add a little bit of information on this very, very important issue. If you read the Press Enterprise on March 24th, oh, sorry. I'm Jeff Hewitt, City Calamasa, 935 Roberts Road. I'm also the mayor. And of course, again, this is just coming down here watching you. It's like watching the guy on the Green Mile walking up to get executed, and I'm in the cell that's the next one. So we're attached that way.
More power to you.
So here we go. Well, more power to you, because if you guys prevail, so will we. Here, let me quote this article from the Press Enterprise, March 24th. And it went over the counties losing $50 to $100 million on its sheriff and its DA thing. According to County Finance Director Paul McDonald, now that's who this, he basically said, we can do a better job of offering cities a different menu of options, lower cost options, he said. If we do that, we have the ability to allow the county to recover more of its costs, yet not significantly increase costs to the city. Now I ask you, if it's good enough for the sheriff's department, it's good enough for other parts of public safety. And we've got, I don't know, have you been invited to the April 14th? My city attorney, my city manager was invited. Evidently Chief Hawkins screwed up and invited some of the electeds. I'm going to be going.
Yes, it's either they have two sessions, one on the 13th, one on the 19th.
Yeah, the one on the 13th is up here and one on the 19th is down low. There's going to be some issues happening. Marion Ashley has a 16-point. Again, the county itself is going through some huge, huge changes. What you have to do is you have to make some decisions and all that right now. But don't give up hope, because remember, they're saying certain things, it's right out there, it's quoted, and these things we all know are right. We're the bosses, they're not. Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
No.
Okay, it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that in absence of a designated parliamentarian, I would be the parliamentarian? Yes. That being the case, I would rule that the direction given to the city manager at the last meeting was clear and authorized by consensus. Now, that being the case, if we have one of the people who consented who wants to bring this back to the table, there would be the option of reconsideration, since the determination was made that was in the affirmative. So I would see that as the option if this were to be needed to be put to a vote. So I guess I'm asking John if you would like this to be reconsidered at this time.
I don't know that we can, the way that the agenda is constructed.
So
I don't think, if I wanted to, I don't think I can, and I don't want to push the issues.
Okay, so we'll let it go with the consensus this time based on the assumptions that were made. The assumptions that were made that it includes whatever needs to be done to get this other cities' blessings of this too. Is that clear?
Yes, it's understandable with respect to both parts of the agreement, one with county fire and with the cost sharing with both Menifee and Lake Elsinore.
So we'll rule that there was an affirmative consensus to proceed in this direction. That was not unreasonable. Is that enough? Okay. Okay. Item B, update on the fire extension negotiations. Any other comments?
No, that's all I have in regards to that.
City manager comments.
That's all I have.
Okay. City council comments. Anyone who wants to say anything? You want to say something?
Yeah, I'm going to say something. You know, I think one of the things that we've got going here is interesting. And one of the things that I would propose, that no matter which direction we go, whether we pass this through the county and this county gets through with that, I would recommend and request to the mayor that whether it's a special meeting or a meeting coming up, that we have LAFCO in to discuss what the disincorporation process is supposed to be. I went to the fire meeting, I heard some minorly correct information and a whole lot of stuff that is speculation, and we should hear it from a source that is credible. The people should hear it from a source that is credible. We have told the people that if you want to have a fire station and paramedics in Station 60 vote the UUT. They voted the UUT, we immediately closed it. And we're going to have it closed possibly for another year. And then expecting people then to vote for a new UUT in the proposal by the consultant. It shows that the next one, probably in a 4-year period of time, because you need to make it shorter, because it takes a $500,000 increase, which is a 50% increase in the UUT tax. And that would only be for 4 or 5 years, because then in the next 4 or 5 years, it's got to go up again, 4 or 5%. And so what is this? And so since everybody wants to talk about the Press Enterprise, you write some good articles in there. I liked your last one. It said, but as experiences of a city like Canyon Lake show, taxes may not be the best solution and can delay difficult decisions rather than truly laying a sustainable foundation for city governments. Canyon Lake voters narrowly passed a temporary utility tax in 2014, yet City Hall is still struggling to make ends meet and provide services. It is now wholly reliant on the tax. Taxation obviously is a quick and easy fix in the short term, but governments should never be quick to tax if they haven't done their due diligence and explored alternatives. No matter what we have seen through this consultant, the taxes are necessary. We're kicking the can down the road, and if we wait, if we get through this and we have a minimal amount, then we have to do something the year after. I don't think, personally, that this will go through. I think Menifee may do it, but I don't think Elsinore will. I don't think it's going to go through. If it does, we still have the same situation. We promised people that this, and I heard in the fire safety meeting that they wouldn't, the committee members wouldn't consider disincorporation unless they were guaranteed that Station 60 would be open. It's interesting that they would not consider disincorporation unless Station 60 is open, but we want to vote to keep it closed for another year. 1 year, now 2 years, and who knows what the third year is. So, you know, where is the credibility in this kicking the can down the road in what we're doing? So I would request, Mr. Mayor, that we have LAFCO, George Spiliotis in here and put on a discussion, whether it's a special meeting, it's a town hall, I don't care, but I want the information out to be out and correct, that the people can hear the true information.
Absolutely. It's interesting that the word credibility was used when Councilmember Zeitz was appointed, not elected, to this position. He made a promise to us that he would not pursue his election goal of disincorporating the city. In the last meetings, that's all we've heard. Do I think it's a way to go? I think it may be a possibility in the future. I've never said it wouldn't be. That would be a last-ditch effort. We're not there yet. We are 1.5 years into this period that we said we would need in order to find out where our footing is and where we could go. At this last fire safety meeting, fire startup meeting, we did discuss briefly whether we would, not whether we would, we as the members of the committee. What had actually happened was a member of the audience spoke up about disincorporating, and I said, can you guarantee that this would save Station 60? We have to honor our constituents, we have to honor our public, and we have to get coverage in there. I can't guarantee that through the county. I can't guarantee that if we lose our city, and so I'm fighting as hard as I can. I too believe that discussions need to be held. I believe this is too soon. I believe that there are certain personal agendas being put forth that are not good for the city. I'm extremely offended at the term credibility being used by somebody who has so blatantly broken the promise that was made upon appointment to this council. We are a city council. You are the mayor, we are the council members. That means we fight for the city as long as we can. We've had 1.5 years where we've had our hands tied by all of this other stuff. We cannot pursue the other things that we need to pursue to help save this city. I'm asking for more time. Will disincorporation be discussed? Possibly, yes. But we need time between now and then. Not now. It muddies the waters. We've got to pursue the direction we were promised we would be pursuing. This is too soon. I do not believe it should be put on another run for the city.
And I would like to just make a comment. The article that John read was from the opinion editor's page, and it was an opinion of one writer. It wasn't God's truth necessarily. It was an opinion of a writer. And I found it annoying that he said Canyon Lake, even though we have this tax, we're still struggling. If you look at our balance sheets and where we're at, the money from the UUT tax is gone for our fire costs and our police costs, period. Nothing else. And we are right now in not a great place, but we're okay. And the projection is that we will continue to be okay. And depending on which way we go with the, what we choose for the options for our fire protection, I don't see a problem. We're struggling really as hard as we can to get Station 60 occupied. If we disincorporate, it's not going to happen. So you people are saying, oh, you know, we got to disincorporate and they're going to have all these wonderful things. No, we will not. We will have less protection from the police. Our fire people could come from some distance away, which we had when we were on the emergency declaration. We won't have any say-so about where it comes from. We have been told that 60 wouldn't, in no case would 60 be occupied. We're trying to occupy 60 with a paramedic, and we are trying to find the best solution we can to our fire protection. And those who right now are, I won't say whining, I will say continually bombarding the city council with disincorporation are for self-serving reasons. I'm about to hear with the self-serving thing. I think what's best for the city is what we have to be concerned with, not what's best for us personally, and making sure that we have our little happy trails for our horses and our gazillion acre park, which the city couldn't afford under any circumstances. So I would appreciate if people would let us do our job and quit pursuing the harassment that they're doing, and quit pursuing trying to disincorporate the city for their own self-centered purposes.
Are there other council comments?
Just one quick comment, one that I made earlier. I'm sure there are some people here that have been around here longer than I have, but not too many. And I can remember the inconvenience of being an unincorporated city. Things have changed. Certainly we don't need some of the services perhaps that we were lacking then. I can remember personally waiting 3 hours for a sheriff to show up. And it was an emergency. I won't go into the details, it doesn't matter at this time. But I have to agree with Dawn and Vicki. We might just let the council do their job. We're trying to do the best we possibly can. Give us a little breathing room. We haven't been in the black in years. All of a sudden we are. Give us credit for that. And credit to the people for passing the utility tax. And perhaps it won't continue, and maybe we won't need it. But let us do our job. Thank you.
Any other council comments?
Well, there shouldn't be a debate, but the reason for having the people come in is to get rid of misinformation like Dawn just gave you. That the station, we have information that the county would not keep the station open. I've asked for that document. There is no such document. Kevin Jeffries has given us a letter that says if it goes to the county, which it probably won't, it'll probably go to one of the cities, Menifee, Lake Elsinore, but if it went to the county, he would do everything in his power to keep it open. There's a letter to that thing. John Hawkins stood here and said that he doesn't make the decision, but that'd be his recommendation. So to say that the station wouldn't be open is either a lie or just misinformed. So let's stop all the misinformation and get somebody in here that can tell the truth and that we can listen to and ask questions and get the real answers.
It's not happening here. It is on record. They have said it, and I'll lay the same challenge. You were there. If somebody can come to me, and I don't know that I can necessarily trust that they will fulfill it, I want a 5-year contract minimum that says they will reopen 60 if we are a disincorporated entity and we are strictly county, then I will start looking at that as another possible way. Until I'm given that, we have one chance to have 60 open and serve our entire public, and that is to fight for it, and that's what we're going to continue to do. And we have to go. I have to go back.
All right. Do you still have a quorum? Yes? Yes, sir. Okay. But before I go public.
What a surprise.
Yes.
Can we adjourn? I've got to go back to work, but I don't want any of that.
Okay. well, we've got a bit of a, I wanted to make a comment too, that I'm doubtful, frankly doubtful that we continue as a city. But that being said, I believe that cityhood is to our advantage and that we should do everything we can to continue to be a city. So I'm kind of in the middle of this argument. I want to make sure all the facts are out there and everybody understands everything. It might turn out if we closely examined the issues of disincorporating some cityhood, we'd realize that clearly, absolutely, unequivocally, it was to our advantage to remain a city. I just don't know because we haven't had that discussion. So the rules, as I understand them, is that at this point that anybody on the council can make a recommendation for something to be put on the agenda. What I would like to suggest, though, since there's so much controversy over this, that this discussion be, before we go through the process of scheduling George and all that, if John would agree to continue this discussion at a later session, again during comments, and then we can have the time and have the full council here to make a decision on whether to bring George in. Do you want to, unless you want it on the calendar, so you're privy. If you want to put it on the agenda, it's up to you. Okay, we've got a request that it be put on the agenda, so can you get in touch with George and see if he can make a presentation about what the disincorporation process is?
The discussion is.
What's that?
The discussion is whether you're going to decide to ask them to come in.
No, the rule is, as I understand it, please check me if I'm wrong, that any council member can make a request for something to be on the agenda.
Yes.
So with that in place, we've got a request.
But you're requesting the discussion whether or not to bring in LAFCO is to be discussed at the next meeting. Not the discussion.
As I understand the request.
Simply bring it in. That's not the same thing.
As I understand the request, it is to bring in George to make a presentation on what the disincorporation process entails. Is that correct?
That's not the same thing.
Mr. Mayor, may I just make a point of information? It is not a opinion at all. My name is Nancy Horton, and I was on the City Council with Mr. Aaron Krantz and with Mr. Brown when the UUT tax was being proposed. We had George Spiliotis here for a full discussion of disincorporation that made it possible for many people to vote for the UUT. He was here, he gave his time for over an hour. People were able to ask him every question that they wanted to ask about disincorporation. He talked about the fact that it has been done so rarely in California and not successfully. He talked about the fact that this city has many assets, more assets than we have debt. That's what he said. And I don't know how Mr. Zeitz could have missed that meeting because he comes to almost all the meetings, but Mr. Spiliotis stood right here and asked every question of the council, and I think it would be embarrassing to ask him to come back because the people on the council don't remember what was said. He did give a full discussion on disincorporation, and after the people heard it, they decided to vote for the UUT.
It's not a point of information.
That was a point of information, and I can find for you the date that he was here. Mr. Spiliotis will have it in his calendar also.
All right, let's debatable with this point of information.
Are you going to have public comments? Because I can make mine a point of information instead of a public comment.
It's not, a point of information is where you're
I
attempting to
can
get
do
information.
that kind of point of information if you're allowing it.
No, we're not going to turn this into a debate right now. But our rules, as I interpret them, is if there's a request from a councilman, that request to be put on an agenda. I don't think there's, that is to be scheduled with the city manager. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. With that being said, my ruling would be we don't have any discretion in the matter and it should be put on the agenda. Okay.
Providing he accepts.
Providing he accepts, yes. Any additional comments from the council? Okay, I would just like to say before we end here that it was an honor to have our congressman here. I think he's provided a lot of insight to me, and I'm hoping provided insight to the community. And even though he's not here, I'd like to publicly thank him for spending his time to come to our little town and making it a better place to live. With that being said, no additional comments. Close the meeting at 3:37.
It's interesting, isn't it? I could only come.
Dawn's on.